Hello and welcome to Roundtable number 12 of Dualistic Unity. I am appreciative of all of the experiences that all of you bring to the table. Anyone listening, anyone on Discord, anyone on Patreon, anyone who joins us for a roundtable. It is fucking awesome to be able to experience through you so many more experiences of this reality, as much as I'm able to experience through this iteration of whatever you want to call it, Andrew, whatever, and then Ray's able to experience through Ray as Ray, and very much not as Ray. It's fun to be able to interact with so many of other iterations of myself and learn from all of you, because it is a constant learning process and learning about myself through you. So I appreciate you very much.
And I am looking forward to shutting the fuck up. After the episode that we recorded today, the group that we had, the intro that we're recording right now, and all of the insights that I've seen and shared and listened to, I'm really looking forward to a period of silence later on where I can just let it settle in exactly how much change has happened in the moments that I've experienced as today.
So with all of that said, I hope you enjoy this live stream that is Roundtable number 12 of Dualistic Unity.
And we are live. Fantastic. Roundtable number 12. This is exciting. It is number 12, correct?
According to the calendar invite you sent, yes.
Then I'm going to assume that that is correct. And that's another good point. It's funny how often it really just comes down to a lack of faith in ourselves. I'm going to assume that when I did that, I was probably thinking clearly. And so it is Roundtable number 12. But the nice part of this, even if it's not, who fucking cares? It's a roundtable. And as always, we're joined with brilliant, wonderful people. And so I'm very excited to kick this off. Of course, we are joined by Amanda, who everybody should know by now. We are joined by Mark, who has been here for the last two roundtables and is an active participant in our group discussions every week. And we are glad that he is here. And of course, we have a new face with us, Michael, who recently joined our group discussions and has been a part of the community for a short while. Glad to have you here, Michael. If you don't mind, just telling us a little bit about yourself. And I know that's a funny question, but tell us a bit about your path and what brought you to DU.
Hey, what's going on, y'all? So I've actually been listening to y'all since season 1, and I'm just somebody that can be kind of quiet sometimes. So I've been a Patreon supporter, like the tier 1 for a long time, until a couple weeks ago. I was like, no, I want to hear more conversations. They're doing a lot more, so I went ahead and went up to tier 2. But let's see. Oh wow, a little bit about me. It's such a broad question. I think like what's brought me to this point is just growing up with a lot of beliefs that were kind of forced on me and not letting me really think for myself for a long time, just due to fear of being judged, fear of letting people down, fear of just not knowing what to do if I gave stuff up. And yeah, I went on some special trips a few times. And that really opened up my eyes just to what was out there and what I could be and what I could do. And so I've gone down this path, y'all. I mean, I've read everything from Graham Hancock to Terrence McKenna, Alan Watts. I listen to talks all the time, TED Talks. I'm just constantly trying to fill my brain up with new information as much as I can. And I'll be honest, sometimes listening to the conversations, I had to like take notes and like go back and reread some stuff just so that I can fully understand what's going on. But it's really fun to get to listen to and just know that there's other incarnations of myself, I guess you could say, that are thinking the same things. Like if we look at the body made up of all these different atoms, it's nice to see that I've kind of formed and come over here to these atoms now, which feels really, really good. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's really good. And it makes me feel really good about the fact that we were able to build you an environment that is appropriate to your journey and that you've helped us do so this entire time. We really appreciate the fact that you joined us here for today's roundtable, because from the sounds of it, you're going to fit right in.
I was going to say you have found the right place. That is for sure when it comes to, the questioning, the recognition that maybe things aren't as they seem, and the willingness to dive into that. There is no better spot than here now and having this conversation even. But that process of questioning is fascinating because that's usually how people start getting into these sorts of things. It's like, things aren't really making as much sense as I was told that they should be or were for my entire life. And you start questioning, and then things start to unravel inevitably. But it's interesting how few people are willing to get into that, or at least take it to the extent that all of us have brought us to, this conversation right now, because there is a lot of discomfort that can come with that. Few people are willing to question anything, let alone continue on through all the discomfort that they inevitably face, because there's discomfort at every turn, but there's freedom around the next turn. And oftentimes they just don't recognize that. And so they're not willing to, take that first turn. But I'm glad you've taken that turn, Michael. And I'm glad you're here with us, because I'm excited to chat with you.
Oh yeah, our conversation is definitely strengthened by all of these inquisitive people. I'm very excited about that. I do want to mention that, of course, Andrew actually does have a topic in mind in regards to need that he would like to explore. I have kind of a rant that I'd like to go on at some point regarding children, parenting, and responsibility. So perhaps we'll go in that direction at some point. But for right now, I'm going to pass it to Amanda and ask her if she has anything on her mind today. And then we're going to go on to Mark and see what he's been doing in his end of the journey, and of course, what he'd like to bring to the table. And we'll just go around and see where this goes. Amanda, hi.
Hi, everybody. I don't have anything on my mind, except I did have an amazing dream last night where I told myself to relax because the work will always be there. And I thought that was really appropriate, that I gave myself a message in my dream to like slow the fuck down. If you can't tell, I tend to run on high energy. I liken myself to jet fuel, it's just, but it was good to relax, and it was good to get that message through my dream. And then what's so funny is that I woke up like as soon as I told myself to slow down. So I guess I heard the message, but I resisted. Like immediately I got the message to slow. Then I was like, all right, enough of that. Woke up. So hilarious.
That's fantastic. I love the fact that the messaging is there. It's like, if you're not going to pay attention to it the rest of the time, you're going to have to pay attention to it now. So that's really good. It's always nice to know that one's mind is as determined as one is, right? Like you might be determined to be, on the ball all the time, but your mind is determined to take care of you in the same capacity. It's kind of like the pointlessness of fighting our ego, right? You start to recognize, oh, right, it's me. That means it's just as strong as me. Right. So no, I think that's fantastic. That's a hell of a dream. And you're right. You are a lot like jet fuel. So anybody who isn't aware, Amanda is largely responsible for a good deal of the brainstorming that happens in Dualistic Unity and the community, amongst the community members, in terms of the directions that we want to go. A lot of it's still coming together. Like it very much is a collage of kind of thought bubbles everywhere. But if you have an idea for how the community could benefit in the long term, if you have something that you can offer in terms of skill sets or in terms of an insight that you would like to share, definitely reach out to Amanda on Discord if you can't get a hold of Andrew and I, because she is right in the thick of it. She catches things that we just don't, and she talks to us regularly. So she brings it to our attention all the time. If it wasn't for Amanda, frankly, I think we'd be more lost than we actually are. So we appreciate you, Amanda. And now, Mark, nice to see you, man.
Thank you. Almost didn't make it in time, so I was rushing to get back. I guess the two things I've been kind of thinking about the last week or so, but one of them is, sometimes I hear people say, now that I have some of these realizations, what do I do now? And for me, I can't even picture a time when I wouldn't have something to do. I mean, besides just always, continuing to try to work on, just being here. I've got so many things that I can continue to work on with my perspective and how I relate, and just the things I do every day that I want to keep working on. And it's really, something kind of came into, I'm not going to speak on it specifically, but, you know, like even just a few days ago, something came into sharp focus for me that I need to continue to work on. And I was actually kind of excited. I'm really glad about that. Like it's invigorating to me now when I find these things that I can practice more on, you know, to, you know, work on my perspective and look inward and find some ways to make some, you know, maybe do some different things that I haven't done and see what happens. And just in that, you know, continuous journey that I've got, I can't even imagine how I could ever be finished, you know, like you say. I mean, I know none of us, you know, we're not perfect or however that goes. There's always something to work on, but literally there really is. And there's so much it's such a big playground. So, you know, that's been one thing. And I've just been thankful that I view it as a positive thing and that it's a challenge to me and not something that brings me down. You know, in the past, you know, when I think of something that I would like to be a little bit different about myself or how I respond or whatever, it would bring me down, but it doesn't now. I'm just like, oh, there's something, you know, and so I think that's a really big change that's happened for me as far as looking at things like that way. And it's been really beneficial. But the other thing I've mentioned, and there's been a few people talking about it on Discord about, you know, some members have talked about, you know, not using their phones as much and things. And what's happened to me over the last week or so is that I didn't make a decision to do it or anything, but I just kind of been spending some evenings without the TV on, which is like a first for probably my entire life, you know? So, and I haven't been like, I better try to live without the TV. You know, it's not been anything like that. It just happens, you know, and I think it's because I'm so much more aware of what's going on around me and just my environment and appreciating just where I'm at and just those things more that it's like, there's this natural movement to remove excess information clouding everything. I'm trying to think of the best way to put it. I don't think TV's bad at all. I enjoy the heck out of it. Have plenty of things I plan on watching, but gosh, you know, it's like last night and the night before both, I didn't even turn it on and I didn't even think about it. I'm just like, I'm just going to sit here with my dogs. I actually colored a little bit last night, you know, but it's just been neat that that's happened because I never even thought about it. And I think it's just maybe a natural progression that you start to notice things that maybe you're getting a lot of input from that's not really being that beneficial. And that's kind of how I'm looking at it. So it's really exciting to me, but I've made sure to not come across as everybody needs to stop watching TV. It's bad, you know, because it's not that. It's just trying to remove some clutter. So that's where I'm at. And for me, it's a really good place right now.
That is fantastic. And I just wanted to say that really does follow up on the conversation that we were having a few days ago regarding dopamine and masturbation. Like the fact is that we keep beating ourselves up thinking we have to do something differently when it really is just switching our priority and recognizing, oh shit, there's all this other stuff that's really fulfilling. And then all of a sudden we just drift away from this thing that at one point was so enticing simply because it, in contrast to the shit we were dealing with all the rest of the time. Right? All of a sudden you're just like, I actually rather like sitting here and coloring or hanging with my dog. But it's not until you give yourself the chance to actually be in the present and out of your head that that's true. So we gravitate to TV because it's better than the constant monotonous fucking self-judgment that we go through in our head all the time. Right? But if you take that out, all of a sudden TV is not quite as enticing. Right? That's why I always find it funny that life is the true HD, right? And we miss it entirely. We're like looking for the better picture. It's like, just look around. Super and like all encompassing, get right into it, right? But we lack that. And so no, it's beautiful to watch. And I wanted to bring up one more thing before I pass it to Andrew. It's funny because at the retreat we have no policy regarding cell phones and mobile devices. Like we don't tell anybody what to do with them. We don't recommend they put them away. We don't do anything. And yet by day 2 or day 3, the bar in the lodge was covered with everyone's phones and they never moved. Nobody touched them for the entire week. Like we actually had some dummy phones around so people could record videos of themselves, how they're enjoying the retreat. They just sat there for the most part. Like nobody wanted to get onto the electronics. The TV never turned on once at the lodge. Like there were people there who were actually saying, we have TVs, and there was a TV in every room.
Yeah, I was one of the ones that asked that as well, and I was supposed to be a host. I should probably know what's going on, and I didn't even notice. Like even picturing right now, like I can picture the lodge, different rooms and whatnot. Like I can't even picture. I don't even see TVs when I picture it, which is so funny. But yeah, Mark, what you finish off there with is like exactly what we were talking about with the whole conversation with dopamine and the idea that people are so focused on the byproducts of the desire to avoid reality, basically. And there's a ton of different ways that you can do your best to avoid being reality here now with yourself and being with yourself. And we do all of these things to avoid that. And we think that that's the thing that's wrong, the TV, the jerking off, the whatever distraction we want to use, and say like, oh, that's it's a dopamine. I'm striving for dopamine. Scrolling on your phone, whatever it is, really all those things are avoiding where you're at, avoiding the potential. And it's also not to say that it's always the case, but if you look at everything as being an option, like you were talking about first, like there's an endless number of things to do. There's so many things you can do at any given time. And we kind of settle upon the easiest, the most immediately gratifying, and all of those things because we don't see the satisfaction in doing all of the other things. And I think a big part is because, and when people, so sometimes I get ahead of myself, but a big part is that people, when they recognize that, oh, there's nothing I have to do, they still don't necessarily feel whole and complete in themselves. And so they wonder what they should do in order to raise their value. They're like, well, I got to find something to raise my value still, even though there's nothing I should do necessarily. They don't feel like their value is full. And so when you recognize that simultaneously with recognizing that there's nothing you should do, all of a sudden everything opens up. Because when you're coming at it from the perspective of not being whole and complete, it's like you still have this tunnel vision. You're like looking for the thing. Oh, that's going to add the most value to me. I'm gonna focus on that. It's like, no, because you're already whole. So then everything is an option. Everything is available. And yeah, I had something else, but I don't remember what it was. So I'm gonna stop talking now.
That's great. If anybody would like to follow up with what Andrew was saying, by all means, raise your hand and whatnot. Other than that, we have a comment in the live stream chat right now. And I am going to direct this one at Michael. Michael, if you had any tips on alleviating constant worry, what would be your, say, top two?
Okay, so I would say constant worry. Number one for me is writing stuff down so that I get it out of my head. I think that is such a huge thing. For the longest time, people would tell me, oh, you got to journal, you need to get these thoughts out of your head. And I kind of, would just overlook it, say, no, I'm good. I can deal with this. But it's one of those things, like once you start writing stuff down, you're able to just listen to yourself and sit in silence. And, I'm not one that really meditates a lot. I have done it before, but I'd say like my meditation is more in my journaling, and that's what really does it for me personally. So that would be number one. I would say number two for not worrying is, it's going to sound stereotypical, but just not giving a fuck. I mean, as soon as I figured that out and was able to just kind of go through life almost like it's just a dream, it's a movie, I'm the actor, this is my expression, what I get to look at, what I get to be a part of. And once you make that turn and you're actually able to truly not care, it's pretty freeing. So I would say that would be two big ones for me personally.
Well said. Absolutely. Hope you don't mind, Michael. I'm going to do that from time to time, just throw you to the wolves. But you handled that perfectly. I just wanted to add one thing for me, and then I'm going to pass it over to Andrew, and we'll see what happens after that. But this is an exercise I think is really helpful. And admittedly, some of it was kind of inspired by my training in martial arts and the conditioning that I went through there. If you find yourself in constant anxiety and worry, by all means, flesh all of them out. I mean that, like go into all of them. What if they all happen? What if everything you worry about happens and everything falls to shit and it's just you in a burning dumpster fire? What if there's nothing left but ash and you? Then what? You're going to be okay? You're going to make it work? You're going to adapt? And if your answer to that is anything but yes, that is the only problem. Because you can adapt, but you just don't think of it that way. So you're afraid of everything falling apart because it means so much to you, but it was never the source of your value. It was never the source of your ability. It was never the source of your potential. It's just what you managed to do with it so far. And it doesn't matter if that all disappears or not, because you remain, which means that everything that you built before is going to inform everything that you build after. So by all means, carry those worries out right to the bitter end. Look at it. What's the worst that could happen? You start over from the ground up. You still have you. Andrew.
Yeah. And yeah, I love that one. I think almost from like the other end of the spectrum, relaxing into the reality of uncertainty, like as much as all of that definitely could happen. And if it did, you would be fine. And like, that is one avenue to take it. I think also understanding that you don't know, you have no fucking idea. And Michael, this kind of points to what you were saying, like when you are able to get it out of your head, because your mind's always going to try and create certainties. It's not really going to be able to organize things super well. So getting it out on paper and having it out there and understanding like, okay, that's a lot of stuff that I don't know. I don't necessarily have any idea about any of this and what's going to happen. And even if it does happen, what it's going to lead to and what that's going to lead to. And so even if the things that I do think are the worst happen, I don't know if that's actually going to lead to a worse situation for me for the rest of my life. And not giving a fuck about what other people think. The reality is you don't know what they think. Like they very rarely come out and tell you what they think directly. So all of our concerns for what people think exist inside of our mind. They rarely ever even voice it. And if they do, a lot of times people are supportive. And sometimes, yeah, people will come out and judge. And I think then it's recognizing where it's coming from and understanding their own shit that they're probably dealing with and their worries for what everyone else is thinking of them helps deal with those. But yeah, for me, my go-to is always relaxing into uncertainty, understanding that I don't know if that's going to happen. If it does happen, I don't know what it's going to mean. If it happens and it means something negative about me, I'm going to learn something. I don't know what I'm going to learn. I don't know what that thing that I learn is going to be able to be used as 10 years down the road. I'm going to be able to look back at that experience, as awful as it was, and be able to help someone else, or at least resonate or empathize with someone else's experience. So there's so many benefits even to it, going and pointing to Ray's example, even to it, everything, the worst case scenario happening for everything. That's quite the fucking experience that you're going to be able to pull from. You're going to learn so many fucking lessons from that experience, and inevitably going to come across people who are worried about that happening, have experienced the same thing, and you're going to be able to connect with them and resonate with them just a little bit deeper, at least because you went through it yourself. So yeah, but uncertainty is always my go-to with worry.
Absolutely. Mark, would you like to toss in anything that you do for dealing with anxiety?
Well, exciting thing is I don't really have much of an issue with it anymore. I did my whole life. Was on meds, all those things for a long time. And the way before last year, when I was still kind of, before I had some really good ideas that have been great, the last few months. But, I had, the first thing I worked on for a long time was just recognizing what I was doing when I was getting into those bad thought spirals, because you get into them, for years and it's just happening. You don't realize, and you're not able to step out and be like, wait, I'm doing it again. Well, I finally got to that point, so I think that's important that you're able to identify it before you've been in it for like 2 or 3 hours. You're like, oh, wait, that's starting again, but so, trying to really work on it at first was, actually just trying to just recognizing that I was, just worrying about something and thinking about things that weren't even pertinent right now, but was making myself a wreck over it. And then I started working on just distracting myself, TV, games or whatever. And it helped a lot. and this was just within the last 2 years. So it really helped because I was really focusing on, I can't do this. And I also would worry a lot when I was lying in bed at night and I couldn't get to sleep. So I really worked on, when I was lying in bed, just putting my thoughts on something else that wasn't, some imaginary thing that I was making up. But then as I've, progressed the last few months, I can't stress this enough. And I know we say it all the time and we've said it before as well. It sounds so simple. But honestly, if you're being here right now and you're appreciating where you're at right now and you're paying attention to what's in front of you right now, you don't have time to, worry and anxieties over stuff that's not in front of you right now. Because if it's in front of you right now, you're going to have to deal with it. But, when my worry and anxiety was over things that were like, this might happen tomorrow. This might happen next month. Oh, I don't know what's going to happen. So, as I've gotten and getting more and more where I'm really just right now, it's just not coming into my head. It's really not. And I'm not saying that happened overnight. It was a process. But, we've said many times here that, yes, it's a lot of work at first, but, to work on not giving as much attention to those thoughts and not, becoming totally distracted by them, practicing seeing them. Oh, there they are, but not quite jumping into them as much. And yeah, it's hard at first, but we've also said that it gets easier and that they get less loud. And, you can't make them go away, but they get less prominent. Well, that's what happens. It happened to me. And now they are hardly even there, if at all. Or if they even peep in, they're not there long because I'm like, no, I ain't doing that again. And I'm like, what's my dog doing? Let's play, whatever. So, and I'm not even exaggerating here. And that's what, and that's what really gets me about all this a little bit. And I was thinking about it last night because I've been doing certain things more on like social media than I ever have. And mainly it's because I'm trying to help increase the ripple. I'm trying to contribute to that, so, I'm just trying to, be a little bit more active there from that perspective, finding things that resonate or whatever and actually sharing it, pushing it forward. So that's what I'm doing mostly with my phone right now. So a lot less of the mindless scrolling I used to do. I actually have more of a point now that I think is pertinent. But, I was just thinking, I've seen so many things and watched so many things, we all do. And one, it's amazing how many things are out there that actually, feel like they have part of what feels like to me, truth, that has a lot of other things with it, and that's fine. But it amazes me. Well, one, I'm very thankful because I've always gone by, when I read all this different stuff over the years, I take away what feels good, what like doesn't cause some kind of weird reaction, but like feels like it's at home inside. And I just don't take the other stuff, but I'll still read it generally, unless it's just way crazy, where it puts me in a really weird place. But I was thinking last night, that's the thing about this, I'm here, I've been here in this community now for, I guess, 3 months. And it's just very rare that I hear anything that doesn't feel right. And I have to go by that because that's what I've always gone by. And it's definitely steered me in the right place because look where I am and I'm happier than I've ever been. But it just amazes me though, because there's so many things I'll hear and I'm like, boy, that's good. Then I'm like, wait a minute, but this just feels right. And everything that we talk about, that we say, if you really, you keep with questioning things and you keep, you just stay on course, try not to get sucked back into your ego too much. We all do it, but if you, just keep going forward, that certain things get easier, certain things do this, and they do. So it's just me saying again in a million words, which should be less, that I'm still here and these things are happening to me the way that I've understood that they would or should, or not should, I hate that word, we all hate that word, but the way that we hope that they would, and it has. And so when I say these things, I'm not making it up. And I feel very strongly about it because I don't stick with things that don't work. I mean, most of us don't, or even things that do work that take way too long. Sometimes you're like, I can't do that. But, it just keeps giving me more momentum. And I'm just so, so appreciative. And it's just, with so much resonates. There's just, because now if I hear something, and sometimes we'll have public calls where someone will be in a certain place and they might bring up a certain perspective they have that maybe is, I might, we might be like, oh wait, yeah, we might want to talk about that. It's not often though. It's not often. So that's I know I went a little bit off on that, but hopefully you got what I was saying, and that's it.
No, absolutely. I love everything you said, Mark. There is no too many words, too few words, shouldn't, none of that shit here. It is what it is. And you said all of that beautifully. And I resonate with it a ton, especially with the, sharing things. And, the ripple is almost, it almost has come to a point for me that any insecurities that arise don't hold a stick to what I'm trying to do here, to the ripple that's being made. It's like, yeah, maybe because my whole thing growing up especially was like, I lacked confidence in myself. I was insecure in my ability to express myself basically. And it's gotten to a point now where it's like, there's too much to do to let that get in the way. It's like, as much as it comes up here and there, like then I take a look around and I'm like, nah, this is more important than that. This overrides that. And even with just the process of doing it over and over, like I used to mull over if I had something coming up in like a week, I would fucking be so focused on and worried about that for the whole week. Like I wouldn't eat as much, like I wouldn't sleep as much, like I'd be so concerned with it. And it's funny now because like, a call like this, I would be, if this was the only thing big happening in my week, like this would be what I would be nervous about for days leading up to it, putting myself out there on a live stream in front of people, talking to people. And now it's like, we have so many things going on. Like we do so many of these that even if we have something, in a week, it's like we have like 25 calls in between that. So it's not even a concern, but that's how it gets alleviated naturally, is going through all of that. And now, we've done 155, 160 episodes on top of group chats, on top of, all the other social media shit I do and just talks and everything. So it's gotten to a point that it's like, it's second nature and it doesn't arise as much. But I think that process of continuing to do it that you alluded to is one of the most helpful things, like taking that action above all else. Like as much as things may be scary when they're existing in your mind, once you do them again, it's like, though, it just is the process of those quieting down. But everyone wants the magic pill, and it's like, you got to go through it at the end of the day. But that's how it works, and that's really the most helpful thing. And understanding that the importance of what you're doing far overrides any insecurities and perceptions of yourself that may seem like they could get in the way. They don't have to.
It's interesting, because I've been working with Andrew now for 15 months as of today. So a little less than a year and a half. And I remember very much, I think it was in the first month of the podcast, I had discussed doing a workshop with him on social anxiety, I believe it was. And I remember he was actually rather nervous about it. Regardless of the fact that he did social media and all that other stuff, he didn't have much experience in terms of workshops. And he was familiar with the conversation. But of course, you immediately start thinking to yourself, like, right, but it's a workshop. So we got to package this up in a certain way. It's got to be structured. It's got to be planned. And I've been doing life coaching for a long time. I've been doing sales and presentations for a long time. And I just said, yeah, I'll meet you the morning of, kind of. And so that was how the workshop started was, we met, I think, a half hour before, and we kind of shot the breeze for a bit. And then we just started doing the workshop. And it took him, I think, a day or two of doing the workshop to really just get into the flow. In fact, I remember very much what the turning point was for Andrew. It's when everything fell apart in terms of control. He was trying to come back for a day of the workshop and his flight had been delayed. And so for the very beginning of our social anxiety workshop on, I think it was day 2 or day 3, Andrew was live streaming from the back of a cab. And so immediately all of his fears of, this is not what workshop runners do or workshop hosts do, immediately there was nothing left that could have went wrong. And so he just relaxed. And every day since then, every workshop we've done, he doesn't even bother in terms of like, should we prep? What do we do? We just have a little conversation about it, get our heads clear as to what our message is or what it is, the intention that we have is going forward. And then we have faith in ourselves. And it takes so long to do that. But I would like to throw this out there that there is a point where you've done enough work on yourself. You have enough conceptual understandings. You've had enough insights that you actually cannot progress further without having some vehicle to express and distill and reanalyze all of those insights. And so you almost have to pick something where you are more in the mess, where you're more in the shit. And so for Andrew, it was workshops. And that's why I recommended shortly after he started doing one-on-ones, because in that there is this difference in relationships, not just about you being good. It's now you being good with another person who's just as equally powerful, just as equally the universe. And so they will push and pull you, whether they are aware of it or not. And so that's a whole other mess. And you have to be in it in order to practice the things that you've been learning otherwise on your own. And so this kind of ties into what you were saying, Mark. You were saying that because you're feeling so much better in yourself, you kind of want to, participate a bit more, spread the ripple, do all that. I would almost say that it's required for you to do so, that the reason you're doing so is because of how far along you've come, that you actually have to distill it and get it out now in order to find more of what's behind what you've already encountered. You have to be challenged. You have to be questioned. You have to go back and forth and see other people's perspectives, which you are already good at. So this is just application as opposed to theory. And I think that that application is so very important. It's the reason you have to get out of your comfort zone. Like our favorite spiritual teacher, Phil Goodlife, made a video about how he does not talk to anybody who's a lower vibration. He stays away from anybody that doesn't agree with his general state of mind. Like they're all obviously low vibration if they're questioning him, right? And it's like, well, that's a great way to never keep yourself in check. Like that's a great way to consistently keep yourself in this echo chamber. One of my favorite questions from the retreat that we had in November, and somebody asked me this, how does it feel to be questioned all the time? I'm like, I love it. I think it's great. It's the only way to make sure that I'm not full of shit. If I'm worried about being questioned, that should concern me, right? Because there's a responsibility that goes with that. And I think that very much is the next step that we're talking about, is because you're good in yourself, you're able to be more sensitive in how you respond to things. And so you're more willing to respond to things rather than just shy away from them, right? You're like, no, I have a sense of my own footing. And so I'm going to respond. Now, this is going to go in a direction that I was talking about earlier, because responsibility is a really big thing for me. As a coach, this is something that I used to wrestle with a lot, because when you're coaching somebody, when you're just giving advice to a friend, you have to understand that you have an incredible amount of power, that people are actually really easy to sway, especially when they're in a position where they don't feel strong in themselves. And so if you aren't willing to look at that and recognize that you can seriously fuck up someone's world, you shouldn't be coaching. You shouldn't be giving advice. You shouldn't be doing any of that shit if you're not aware that you can do damage, because more than likely you're just focused on how it makes you feel to help someone, how it makes you feel to give advice, right? But if you're aware that these people have lives, there's a degree of responsibility that goes with that. And this is something we covered in our coaching workshop. We talked about how it's very important to recognize that you're adjusting the flow, that by posturing and putting yourself up on a pedestal, you're actually disempowering people. There is a lot of responsibility that goes with relationship as a whole. And this goes to my original gripe regarding parenting. I cannot tell you how much this means to me, because my own parents were irresponsible fucks who only thought about themselves. I was kind of an afterthought. I know other people in this conversation have gone through some of that as well. And so looking back at the life we had, and the simple fact that a lot of that pain, a lot of that suffering, a lot of that conflict could have been reduced, mitigated, or outright eliminated altogether had they just looked at what they brought into the world and took responsibility for it, rather than just thinking, well, that's what we're together now, we have kids, right? That's what couples do, or if we have kids, we're going to stay together forever. Like all of this self-serving bullshit, right? Or worse, oh, I'm going to make such a great parent. I'm going to make the best mom, or I'm going to make the best dad. It's like, how do you know that? Like, are you even good in terms of being a friend? Are you even good at listening to people, let alone some toddler that can barely communicate its wants or needs? I think children aren't accessories. They're not property. You don't own them. They're not a bag. It's not something that you're meant to, put on parade and go, look, I have children. That defines me. It's none of that shit. It is a person just like you. And just like you can fuck up their whole world just with a thought, a word, just a moment where you're not paying attention to how much responsibility you have for this child, because they don't have defenses. They're not like you in your grown-up form. They haven't been subjected to the world and all that shit. You're their template for humanity. You are their template for what they're supposed to grow up into, or at least that's how they look at it. And if you're only thinking about yourself, what are you teaching them? So it's not enough to just be excited about being a parent. There should also be some downright fucking dread right in the pit of your stomach. You should feel it, because what you're doing is huge. You are helping create the next iteration of the universe. And if you don't see it that way, don't do it. It's my best advice. That was my rant for today. So I'm gonna stop there and pass to Andrew.
Well said. The first thing I thought of when you started with that was it really comes down to not thinking about yourself so much with anything. I think pointing to the example you gave of our social anxiety workshop when I was in that cab and I was like fucking frantic, like it was just all the shit happened. My flight got delayed. It was traffic. It was whatever. And I'm like 20 minutes out. I'm like, Ray, I'm still in the cab. And so I wasn't able to think about myself in that moment, in that situation. There wasn't space for me and all the other shit happening. And so it was an opportunity to let go of that. And it's the same with parenting. Well, I mean, I feel weird talking about parenting, honestly, but it's because I'm not a parent, for those who may not know.
But you were a child.
That is true. But yeah, so regarding that, I think you mentioned this already, but how much you think about yourself. And it's the same with any kind of relationship, really, is how much are you involved in it? How much does this mean about you? Because that can go both ways. That can be, how much is this going to add to my value? How much is this, is this diminishing my value right now? And so if you're involved, work on that. Work on getting your idea of yourself and your ability to grasp value from the situation out of the equation. Because a lot of times people will have kids thinking that it adds value to them. It gives them a purpose. And it's like, it's such a double-edged sword, because, then they see it just as that. They don't see it as another iteration of themselves. They don't see it as cultivating an aspect of the universe and creating a template for what's to come with all of it. It's like the more limited of an idea, how focused you are on yourself, lack of sensitivity you're going to have to everything going on with that child. So if you want to be a good parent, let go of the idea that it means anything about you, that it adds or takes away value through what you do. Because if you're afraid of it taking away value, it's like you're acting out of fear, out of concern, and constantly still worried about yourself. If you think it's adding value to you, you think that the kid is going to add value to you. And we were talking about this yesterday, just with like sports and competition and all of that stuff, like thinking that your kid makes the top team makes you more valuable. It's like, get yourself out of the fucking way. And that's, if there's any way to be a better parent, it's that. I think having less of a concern for what it means about you, basically. So, Michael, throw it to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in. This is a very interesting topic for me. So I would say that because for me, I think one of the biggest things that I've learned from my parents, just looking back on the way that they raised me, is how important open dialogue and communication is. You know, I come from a family that, you know, very big Christian background. And a little bit about me, I am gay myself. And so I remember talking to my parents and letting them know about that, right? And it was one of those things that we talked about for one day, and then we just never talked about again. And it's because, you know, my parents, they both of their families come from like this communication style that we just put a smile on and we don't talk about anything at all. So it's interesting how that was how my parents were raised, and then how they passed that on to like me and my sister. And so it's been really interesting and given me a chance to kind of just step back and show them some grace in a sense, and just be like, hey, you know, like this is how it was, but I'm going to make sure that I'm trying to communicate with you and still have a relationship with y'all, even if y'all have made it a little bit harder to do so. And that's taken a lot of time, y'all. There was years and years and years that me and my parents just didn't even talk. And I would say it hasn't been until about the past 3 years that we've had a really good relationship. They still don't talk to me about being gay. My mom still sometimes likes to say, oh yeah, you know, maybe, you know, you're going to find a wife eventually. Like they say all kinds of really messed up stuff to me. But like I said, it just gives me an opportunity to kind of take a step back and just try to understand, like, hey, this is where they come from. This is their beliefs. I can't change their beliefs, but all I can do is just keep doing me. And so, yeah, like I said, I just think communication is key.
Agreed. Absolutely. It's interesting. We don't often think of it this way, but being a parent, I very much got this perspective as my daughter was growing up, that my daughter is essentially growing up from the combination of my mentality and my wife's. So she is taking off from where I took my entire life to get to. And as such, she's kind of growing in a different direction based on all of that. Then even I'm growing because she started there. She didn't get any of the shit that I got before. She got what I had when she came into the world and everything I've adapted since then. But our children are always growing from the mentality that we brought them into the world in. But if we're not changing, if we're not questioning ourselves, then our children are almost destined to distance themselves from us. It's almost required. You know, even in the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus says, you know, you will hate your parents, right? Straight up. And it's just because he's talking about the difference in mentality. He's not saying like you're going to despise them for that, but there's going to be a point where you're actually going to have to let them go in order to progress, right? In yourself, not let them go in terms of never talking to them again, but let them go in terms of them meaning anything about you. Like the fact that they're not willing to change their mentality has nothing to do with you and everything to do with their fears. So the bright side of that is, look how far you've come. Like, look how much you've done with the mentality that they were trapped in and you escaped. That's fucking incredible, right? They may not appreciate it, but the rest of us certainly do. Mark.
I just want to comment on two things real quick. You know, first, Michael, I was going to say same. I'm gay, live in Northeast Tennessee, grew up in a small community, 3 crosses up on the hill in town. You know, dad was basically a preacher, uncle's a preacher, this person's preacher, that person's preacher. Never got to have that conversation with my parents. One time when I first got my ear pierced in college, they came straight away with Bibles to where I was staying and dragged me out of the house and asked me tons of questions and what are you doing and all these things, because back then, you know, earring equals gay, which it was true, but whatever, you know. But anyway, I shrank back. I was like, no, it's just an earring, you know, and let it go quietly back into the box, because I knew we weren't going to have that conversation, and it wasn't going to go anywhere that I wanted it to go. But the result was that I became distant for about 10 years, and they didn't see me hardly at all. And after those 10 years, when I got a little bit secure in myself and I graduated from college, so I was definitely getting a little bit more stable, I started going back around. And unfortunately, my mom passed away about a year after that. But I had another 10 years with my dad, and we got a great relationship, but we never had that discussion. They knew, I mean, of course they knew, and he knew, but he would still make a comment every once in a while about grandchildren from me, even though he already had 4, from the others. But that's fine. I got to the point where it didn't hurt me anymore, but it took a long time. It took for me not being dependent on anyone and getting my life set up, or at least getting started, getting out of college and things, to where I was like, okay, this doesn't have to hold me back anymore. And just like Ray said, I'm shocked that I ended up who I am compared to where I came from in my family. I mean, they were great, but most of my family stayed right in the town they were born in. Most of them didn't go to college. Most of them didn't get any, their minds didn't open up. They go to the same churches they've gone to their whole lives almost, and that type of thing. And that's all fine and good, but I'm very different. I have much more open views. I've been exposed to a lot more, and so it is something to be happy with. But just to echo that, I can't even imagine. And I had a great family, but if I had always just been able to not be afraid to say things, I mean, not even just that, but just anything. I didn't tell my parents anything because it was just going to be too much, or they wouldn't understand, or they just couldn't handle it, or whatever. I can't even imagine being able just to talk and ask questions and not worry about it. And that, as far as children, I don't have children, but I do have animals that I care very much about. And the way that I've taken care of animals over the years has evolved, as far as, just learning what being responsible for another life is. And, even in the past several years, I continue to take that more seriously, because it is, there is a life. I don't care what it is. There is a life in your custody, a life. Your life was in someone's custody once. And we all know how we have lots of memories of that. But, up to this point now, and I was thinking about this week, I'm to the point now, like I said, I'm always trying to be here. I'm always trying to be appreciative for where I am right now. And I look at these pets that it means so much to me, that, they're with me all the time. And I make a point, every time I pass them to touch them, to give them attention. I make points throughout the day to sit and play with them. And I just keep doing better at that. I always feel like I'm not doing it enough. But pets, they can chill with themselves. They're good. Kids need even more than that. But can you imagine if you had a child and every time you passed them in the house, you gave them a gesture of love? Every single time, like you just walk by them and you always make sure that you smile at them, or just pat them on the back, or just something. I try to do that with my dogs. If I pass them or I'm in the room with them, they're going to know it, and I'm doing it on purpose. But can you imagine just that with a child, what that would do alone? But there's so much more to it. I can't even imagine taking that job lightly. But, there's so many kids born before anybody even knows who they are themselves. I mean, I didn't know who I was, and I wasn't even close when I thought I figured it out in my early 30s. Right now I'm just really figuring it out. But even if you don't get to that point, I still wasn't even stable at all, mentally or whatever, till I was in my 30s. I just can't imagine. And I just wanted to add that, because I was thinking about children, just when comparing it to how much I feel like I slight my dogs with attention and love, and making sure that they feel, happy and nurtured. If I had a child, it's, I don't know, but it's everything. It's just everything. And if you're not going to do it all the way, and understand that you're responsible for this life, and these things, this life may remember or have suffering related to what goes on here decades from now. I'd like to think that a lot of people would maybe do it a little differently.
I agree. And I just want to say, Mark, that I resonate with everything you said. In fact, everything I do as a parent is very much in that vein. I always want my daughter to know that she's at least a big part of my awareness and my focus all the time. Even if we don't have to be talking all the time, just know that, I'm aware of you. You're not forgotten. You're always very much in mind. But there is such a limit on our capacity for that comes from need and identity. Like, there are so many people who have children because that's what you're supposed to do, right? There's so many people who have children because, well, we've been together, we've been married now for a while. People have children at this point, right? And so it really isn't coming from a place of priority. Well, for example, you brought up pets, and you're right. It's exactly the same. There's really not much difference except the lifespan. Really, like you give your dog so much attention, but they live 7 times shorter life. Right? So you have to give them that much more, quite frankly, to deal with the time disparity, right? But in that responsibility, it really comes down to your ability to prioritize them, right? And what I mean is that, so this just happened recently. I have a neighbor, she had a cat, and her cat was very much an ornament. Like, she had a cat, so she had a pet, someone in the house basically make sure she wasn't alone, but she never really resonated with the cat. It was out most of the time, or it was just ignored. Then the cat died. Took her 2 days to go buy another cat. Right? 2 days. And it's just because there's no awareness there. Like, there was no connection to the animal. There was nothing in terms of a recognition of her own life and what it was like to exist, or any of that, because it was all just going from point A to point B, doing the thing that you're supposed to do, solving your own selfish needs, focusing on that lack of satisfaction or that lack that you feel and all that stuff. And it was never about connecting on any level whatsoever. And so it changes the responsibility entirely, right? And this is why, some people shouldn't have pets. Straight up, like, this is something that happened a lot during COVID. Drives me nuts. But the fact is that a lot of pets got returned to shelters when COVID was done. And it's because they bought them for the sake of, make me feel better while I'm stuck in the house. And after that, they were worthless, and they were basically just dropped. And that shit happens all the time to pets and humans alike. And it's simply because we're operating out of that slow-minded superficiality, where we're only focused on ourselves and what we're supposed to do and our sense of value and fitting in and towing the fucking societal line, all that shit. And it never ever comes down to the fact that, right, I know what it's like to feel human. I know what it's like to feel human. And that's what changed me as a parent. It's not the fact that I want my daughter to think a certain way of me. It's not that I need to think a certain way of myself. But when I look back at my life and all of the times when there wasn't anyone fucking there, or the person there was just thinking about themselves and using me to do that shit, it inspires me to not do that. It inspires me because I know what it feels like. And so I can feel what it's like for my daughter when she goes through that shit. And that's what changes my priority. It's not based on need, it's based on empathy. And that's based on self-awareness. And that is the one thing we fucking lack, because you'll notice all of these parents who are focused on themselves, who put themselves before those they brought into the fucking universe, are all thinking about themselves. They don't actually feel connected to anything. So how can they feel connected to their children?
Yeah, I think responsibility seeing kids, I guess, as a burden versus an opportunity is how I'm, I don't know, kind of digesting all of this. Because in my own life, and Ray brought up that a lot of people see kids as a need, almost like they see it as, well, society, societal blueprint, go to school, get married, have a family, have kids, retire, die, all that shit. And it's very interesting to me that people see having kids as just something you do. Like, it really has become that. And even thinking back to my perspective a few years ago, like, I think I've brought this up in an episode before, but one of my best friends has always said he's never having kids, whether it's, because of he can be very self-deprecating or whatever, doesn't think that he would do any good having any kids in this world. And he's like, half joking when he says stuff like that. But I always I never understood that going through college. I was like, what do you mean you're not going to have kids? And I was basically like, everyone has kids, it's what you do. And now I totally understand where he's coming from. And just in my own life, in my own perspective, like, I have no idea if I'm ever going to have any kids. I am not assuming that I will. I'm not assuming that I won't. I'm not assuming I'll get married. I'm not assuming I'll have a family. None of that stuff, because I don't know. How could I possibly know? How could I possibly know if any of that is what's best for me? But when I do think about having kids, or even just a kid, I see it very much as an opportunity, as opposed to, a burden, a weight, all that shit. And because a lot of people have the perspective that kids are a need, like, I need to have a kid because that validates my value, that gives me value. I don't feel valuable in myself. But hey, I have a few kids, that I'm a parent, and now I inherently have value to our society because I am pushing the fucking broken down system along, because I am adding to it with children. And so from that perspective, kids aren't an opportunity to have impact on yourself being reality. They are something that you need in order to feel valuable, and therefore a weight, no differently than having a shitload of money, having a gigantic home, having a 20 super nice cars. Those are all weights as well, because they are something you need to have in order to see value in yourself. And for a lot of people, kids are in that same category. There's something that they need in order to feel like they have any value. And so therefore they become a weight. The things we possess us. And it's not necessarily in that same vein, like a car or a house, but I think it very much falls into that category almost by default when you need it in order to derive value from it, because your perspective of it is not, it's not coming from a place of recognizing the gravity and the seriousness with which you should take adding another iteration of reality to reality. But when you don't see it as something you need to do, when you don't see it as something that will add or take away value from you because you're already whole and complete in yourself, it very much can be an opportunity. And when you come at it from the perspective of it being an opportunity to have not more influence, but a little bit more of a direct influence on reality, being able to so closely raise something and have impact on it, because children are basically sponges for the first 7 to 10 years. It's very much an opportunity. And with that, there's inevitably going to be a ton of seriousness with which you take it, because you see yourself changing with this child. If you don't give a fuck about it, those are the kids that turn into, sociopaths, or the ones who no one gave a fuck about them. They had no love in their life. So they tried to find it in other ways, tried to find it through other things. And it's because the people who were raising them were so caught up in themselves, they didn't even see them. And they couldn't possibly take the time or the energy to focus on them, because they were seen as something that was supposed to provide them with value. And they recognized that, oh, this doesn't add to my value either. It's not as much of a necessity anymore. So I think when you don't come at it from the perspective of a need, it's more easy to see having children as an opportunity to impact reality, as opposed to a weight or a burden that you thought you were going to get value from and didn't. And so therefore, you don't need them as much anymore.
Yeah, that's such a good point. It really is. It's like I was saying before, that, your parents or your children learn who you are, not what you want to teach them. Right. And so if you're going to have children, better make sure you know who you are, right? Or at least you've got some good footing there, and you're doing the work, as it were. And the reason is because if you don't, and you have children out of need, you are going to pass that need on to your children. And this is something that unfortunately happens in a lot of families, is that you have parents that use their children to self-validate, and by virtue of that, actually teach their children subconsciously to be codependent, to need those parents, and to constantly be worried about their disapproval, and constantly be looking to them to pay attention to them, to validate them, to do all that. And these parents do this subconsciously, not recognizing that it's all part of the fucking drama that feeds their narrative, but their children pick that need up. And that's that gap. This is what I was saying to Michael and Mark in terms of growing beyond your parents' mentality, moving beyond that need for validation, beyond that need to have them look at you with approval. That's a hell of a journey. Like that whole transition is massive, and it's not always easy because they don't appreciate what you're doing. So that all said, I'm going to pass this over to Amanda, because Amanda, I know from our conversations recently that you've gone through some of this transition in yourself, recognizing where that hesitation came from in terms of setting distance, where some of the pushback came from in terms of their resistance to you growing beyond their mentality. I would love to hear how you weathered that, and maybe some tips for people who are going through something similar.
Yeah, so it's been an interesting journey because I've gotten to see pretty much on both spectrums, or both sides of the spectrum. So when I was a little girl, you know, super close with my mom and my dad. I had a 2-parent household. I come from a Spanish background, so there's lots of people. If Spanish people, they live up to the stereotype, they know how to make people. And so I had like dozens of cousins and dozens of aunts, and you know, I'm just saying there was a lot of fucking people. If they knew how to do one thing, was make other fucking people. Now, how to treat those people, how to connect with those people, they fell a little short. But in terms of, you know, increasing production, spot on. So I had my mom and my dad. And for my mom and my dad, I am the only kid that they made, but they had children in their first marriages. They together were the second marriage. So my dad had 3 kids and my mom had 1. And then they had me. There's a big age gap, probably like 17 years between the youngest kid and the oldest kid. And I worshiped my parents at first, not only because that's how the Spanish households are raised. You do not speak unless you speak when you're spoken to. But if, like, let's say I had to ask a question, I had to say, excuse me. And then once I was acknowledged, then I could ask my question, but I had to ask it very respectfully, because if not, there was no cushion. You would get hit. And so I learned very quickly to honor and obey, not to push back, not to fight back, follow all the rules. And the rules are pretty simple. Pick up my toys, be quiet, keep to myself. I loved books. And so that was really easy for me to do. Just kind of be in my own little bubble and to come out when I was asked, and to do my little dance, you know, wear my little dresses and go to the family events and all that shit. But it was a really consistent for probably 0 to 11 years old. And then at like 11, my dad brings me to a family friend's house. I'm playing with her kids. He's playing with her. Didn't realize that. Come out of the room to get like a juice box or something, and I see them in the kitchen, and shit hits the fan so quickly. My dad stops playing with her. He throws me in the fucking truck. We drive back to my mom, our home. At 11, you're old enough to know, you know, that I used to hear. So what's funny to me at that moment was like, I used to hear my parents having sex, and it was so horrible. I was like, I hate it. But then they'd be like, how do you think you got here? I was like, I don't fucking know, but it sounds horrible. Like, I don't know what you guys are doing, but it doesn't sound great. So, but I knew that they were allowed to do all that. So when he was doing that with her, with the other woman, I was like, wait a minute, like, I don't want to see you do it with anyone, but you're only supposed to do it with one person because you are married to my mom. So I went home. I called my mom. I tell her, she must have called him on his cell phone, but then he comes back to the house, and he's a big guy. You know, he's like 6'1", 6'2", like 250, and he'd range from 250 to like 300 pounds, and big and scary and domineering, and not a compassionate person. So like, it felt like he was daddy or fucking Godzilla. It would be one or the other, because there was no middle grounds. And so he's like yelling at me and looking at me dead in my eye, and he's like, you know, this is your fault. You broke up the family. Your mom and I are going to get divorced. I can't believe you betrayed me. I can't believe you did this to me, blah, 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 this, that, and the other. And I am fucking crushed. I'm just like standing there in front of him like, yesterday you were fucking cooking burgers for my birthday for my Barbies. Like, what the fuck? Like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Like, family's broken and it's my fault. And so like, I fucking believed that shit. It took me, let's say, from 11 to like 20 before I really started to pick that message apart. But in the meantime, the family broke up, he moved out the house, and I couldn't really get close to my mom because, you know, her and I weren't very close. I was very much daddy's little girl. And so I wasn't really close to her. And then, you know, I'm the one who told her. So I'm like, I'm like the horrible messenger. So it's like, there's just this disconnect. But she still tried. And I do appreciate that because she took us on like mother-daughter days, and we would hang out and do all that good stuff. So I know that she did try, but she also came from a broken household. Her parents broke up when she was about the same age. You know, she wasn't close to her mother. She wasn't close to her dad. She didn't, she had a very, very rough upbringing. And so did my dad. And I knew that about them. And so that helped put things a little bit into perspective. But honestly, I just pushed that shit down, didn't really pay attention to it, just focused on creating a shield out of my brain because I wasn't physically intimidating. And my mom and my dad were the fighters, and my brother was the fighter, and all the other siblings were gone. But I was always like the black sheep of the family because I was not the fighter. I looked white. I didn't really like having boyfriends. So I was like a reader. I was always alone. I was very, very different than the rest of my family. So there's having 1,000 options, right? But I can't even pick any of those options because when I pick them, they don't pick me. And so I really had to learn very quickly how to be my own best friend and I did make a few like friends from school, and I didn't make many. I had one best friend that I made at 11 and another at like 16. And I held on to them because they were there for me in ways my family couldn't be. I was there for them and vice versa. We just gave each other space to do our own thing. And it was just really, really good. But at 20, it was like, okay, like, what are we not going to date anybody forever because we can't trust relationships? Like, what are we just not going to fucking have more than 2 friends? Like, come on. I had to like call myself out. Like, what the fuck are we doing? Because now we're an adult. Now there's no more blaming mom and dad. Now there's no more blaming every other fucking person because at some point it's on you. As much as shitty things can happen to you, as much as those things are not in your control, once you are old enough to make those choices and to do your own thing, it is fucking on you, man. So you really have to take ownership of that, no matter how unpleasant it feels, no matter how confused you may be, or no matter where you don't know where to start. I didn't fucking know, but I had to just throw myself out there and try and date a nice guy and make other friends who would blow me off, guys who would fucking, it just didn't work out. But it was on both of us. I'm not going to blame the friends, the ex-friends or the ex-boyfriends. I had baggage, they had baggage. We weren't dealing with our baggage. We were just using each other as distractions. And I get that. So it took me, but at least at 20, I was finally being honest about the skeletons in the closet. I was finally ready to look at them and to see where I contributed, what stories I believed, and what stories were full of shit. Because my dad put all that responsibility on me. My parents, my siblings put so much on me, and yet they were hurt, they were lost, they were broken, they didn't know what the fuck they were doing, but they made it seem like they knew and I didn't. And because I'm not doing what they want me to do, I'm the fucking problem. So Amanda's always been the problem, right? And I was like, oh, well, fuck me. What am I supposed to do? So it was just a lot of introspection and a lot of just trial and error, just going out there, figuring things out, and then seeing, so what clicked probably like at 25 was the fact that I had maintained friendships from 11 and 16. And I was like, well, if I can maintain them, and they're amazing friendships. I tell them everything. They tell me. We've been through ups and downs. When I'm down, they pick me up, vice versa. We encourage each other. And I was like, damn, these are probably the best 2 relationships with people that I'm not related to, that owe me nothing. And so I use them as an example because I was like, it's proof that I can connect with people that don't owe it to me. And it's proof that I can be there for someone and that someone can be there for me, and we're not using each other and we're not distractions, even though sometimes maybe we get fucked up on the weekend. Sure, maybe we have a distracting moment, but the relationship itself was solid. And so that helped me like just have that proof. And then I just took it from there and just kept working on myself, kept picking apart the stories, and then learning more about my mom and my dad. My dad never met his father, came from Puerto Rico, where everybody could beat you. Your mother, your teacher, your neighbor, everybody could fuck you up. He didn't trust people, of course. And what really clicked for me and him was when my oldest sister had committed suicide. And this was probably like her 9th attempt, and it finally worked. Well, you know what I mean? And she accomplished what she wanted to do, but she was hurting because his first wife, she had killed herself. Her mother had killed herself when my sister was like 12 and 13. And my 2 sisters and my older brother come home from middle school and they find their mother hung in the basement. And that's what the fuck they found. And then my dad lets them get emancipated. And so they lose their mother and their father in one shot. And so like they couldn't get over that, and they were so hurt. And I'm standing next to my sister's dead body in a fucking casket. And my dad walks over, mind you, he's paying for the funeral, tells a family friend to invite me to this funeral. I haven't talked to him since I was 11, but he walks up to me at 25 or 26. And he's like, hey, Amanda, how have you been? Why haven't you called me? My number's been the same. And I was like, I've just been so busy, Dad. It's so good to see you. Because at the end of the day, as much as you guys can think I'm so nice, I can be a real motherfucker. And I learned that from my mother and my father. And I learned that from out of survival. And so I'm just looking at him like he is in his 60s. He's lost his oldest child. He's talking to his youngest child, who he hasn't seen, who he doesn't know. He doesn't know who I am at 26. He knows the old Amanda, and he knows that power dynamic. But that's not the person standing in front of him. And so I went to that funeral very much open to starting fresh. We don't even have to talk about the past. That shit is dead and gone. Let me get to know who you are today, and you could get to know who I am today, and let's see if we could start something fresh. But you want to talk to me over my dead sister's body, and you want to ask me, why the fuck haven't I called you when you're the dad? I'm sorry, am I daddy? Because I could have swore I was baby. That's what I thought I was. But if you're going to look at me and just say, where have you been? Then I'll just play that game. And then I was a little motherfucker that night. I just told him all the things that I had been doing since he had left, to show him that like I didn't need him, that I had 0 kids, that I had graduated twice debt-free, that I taught myself how to do that I was getting ready for law school, that I was young and beautiful and thin, and I was working at this big, beautiful casino, and I was doing all these, and I had traveled to 25 to 50 states. So I was like, you thought that what? You thought that with daddy gone, baby was going to sit in the corner and cry all fucking day? Fuck that. If there's anything that you did teach me, was that you could start over, because my dad has let go of his entire family. He doesn't talk to anybody that he's related to. And he seems to always have kids until they're like 12. And then something goes wrong, and then he just starts over again. And because everything always happens in that 10 to 13-year-old range is when he's never been a father from 0 to 18. It's always like at the halfway mark. And it's always at that age where your kids can see who you are and start to challenge you. And it's no more worshiping. And so when he's not worshiped anymore, and that helped it click in that day, because I was like, all right, here I was thinking that something was wrong with me, thinking that I was worth leaving, that I didn't do what he needed me to do, and I betrayed him, and so I wasn't good enough to stay. And really, our whole relationship was bullshit. It may have been real on my side, where I really did love this man for protecting me and showing me and catering to me and all that, but he only liked me because I filled a blank. He never actually liked child Amanda. He never liked how much I loved learning and loved reading, and he didn't really get to know me. I was just someone who worshiped him, and I just made him feel better when he couldn't make himself feel better, or not feel better, because where he couldn't feel free. And so I was a distraction from not being free, and I was just his feel better. I was his feel better, Band-Aid. But he never actually worked on why he was in so much pain from his childhood. And it was so crazy, because I'm looking at this grown man and I'm like, damn, I understand why you're hurting more than you are. You don't even know why you're doing all these things. You don't even know how fucked up you are. And you're trying to make me feel bad. And I just was okay with not talking to him again. He ended up moving out of state, and that was totally fine. Then with my mom, we always stayed a little apart, but close enough. And then like 2 years ago, December 2020, we get into a fight over my grandmother, who we're caring for, and she kicks me out the house. No mercy, no hesitation, just kicks me out the house a couple weeks before Christmas, a couple weeks before my birthday. And I'm like, damn, I am a fucking grown ass adult, and I'm an orphan by choice. I have 2 living parents who are walking the fucking earth, who want nothing to do with me because they don't want to own the shit that they made, the bullshit that they made. And they're trying to blame me. And so I was like, thank you, Dad. Fucking thank you. Because that helped me deal with my mother so fucking well that like I was still paying for our cell phone bill, and she wasn't talking to me. And I was like, you know what? I can make it through this because I am my friends. I am here. I will never leave my side. I am never going to be gone. I will never have to convince myself to stay. I will be here every morning. I will be here every night. I will love me. I will be there for me. I will cheer myself on. I will make 1,000 fucking friends. I will either have the opportunity to be a parent and be a better parent than I got, or I will adopt, or I will give, or I will donate. I will just be my whole fucking family if I really needed to be, because no one can make you feel the way that you can make yourself feel. And no one should, so put that responsibility on someone else is not fair, because they have their own life. They have their own, interests and needs to take care of. They have to have their own back, and you have to have yours. And if somebody's willing to give you love and effort and attention and time without strings, that's fucking beautiful. Accept it. But it's not a requirement. I am my foundation. I am the home I live in. And so I make sure to have a happy home and fill it with love. And yes, we make mistakes. And yes, we stumble and fall flat on our face. But at the end of the day, nobody's going to have my back the way that I will. And then I can still give from a full cup, because if I don't need you to be my rock, I can be my rock, and then I can have overflow, and then I can give more to other people. And to make it through my mother and my father and family members and boyfriends, and it's just like, damn, there's nothing that could break you. Only you can break you. So just always keep digging deep, because you will like a lotus flower, you will fucking push through the mud, and then you will blossom and you will figure it out. And you don't have to know all the steps, but just, it's okay. It's okay not to know, but it's also okay to just be there for yourself. It's just, I'm really grateful for everything that's happened because of everything that I've learned. And I would honestly do it again. I would do it again I would go through everything that I've been through if I knew I could guarantee being here in this call with all of you, being in the DU community. People want to know why I go so hard for DU. It's because I know what it's like not to have DU. I know what it's like to be lost when you have a surplus of family and friends around you, but nobody's really there for you because they're not really there for themselves. So to have a space where it is a genuine space for us to figure it out together, to be in this space together. Oh my God, man, you guys are my fucking dream come true. And that's why I love you so much. And that's why you'll see me giving and not really asking for too much, which I do appreciate Ray, because he's like, sometimes you need a spotter, and, like spotting at the gym, sometimes but I've been so strong for so long that I just, asking somebody for help always felt like a trick, because then it was used against me. It's like, oh, well, I did this, and I would have never did that if I knew you were going to do it. I'm like, what the fuck? That's not help. That's manipulation. So I didn't want to ask for help, but now I'm like, it's okay. Like, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to give it, and just pay attention. Just pay attention, because if you pay attention long enough, you'll see red flags or you'll see green flags. So it's just relax, pay attention, and try to have a little bit of fun.
Well said. Absolutely. I think it's so interesting that I think one of our biggest problems is that we've been sold on this idea of adulthood having something to do with the number of years that you've been on the planet, instead of the mentality that you've managed to get to. Like, if I was to say that parenthood has an ideal mentality, it would be the mentality that you just expressed, Amanda, which is that the buck stops here. If there's shit wrong with my life, I fix it. It's on me. Because as a parent, you can't be leaning on your children for validation. You can't be leaning on your children to make you feel better or help you regulate. Like, that is not the fucking point. And that's exactly it. But we have children without being adults ourselves. And so our parents are children, but they appear like adults because we're so small. And so it's really misleading. We really start to think like, oh, they're huge. They have to be fully grown people. It's like, that has nothing to do with body size at all. It has everything to do with mentality, but our culture does not take that in. So what's that? You're 16, you can drive. What's that? You're 18, oh, you can drink. You're an adult now. It's insane. And because we do this thing where we have a narrative that we're supposed to do this and then this and then this, and we have a relationship, and we have kids and so on and so forth, we never actually get to that maturity level where we can be parents, where we can be enough of adults to raise children, because we're still thinking of ourselves like children. We're still chasing the fucking soother all the time. And so I've noticed something, and I just wanted to bring this up before I pass it over to Andrew. All of our stories, for the most part, come down to one thing: a shit ton of time alone. Anybody else notice that? That all of it comes down to taking the time to self-reflect. All of it comes down to taking the time to jump into challenges on your own without leaning on someone else. Always. It doesn't matter if it was because your parents were shitty or not. It always comes down to how much time you have spent self-regulating or learning to self-regulate. That fucking blows my mind all the time, because how much of our society is I guess, geared away from being alone, right? Got to join groups, got to fit in with the clique. You got to fucking, go to school and all this other stuff. We have no time to self-reflect. We have no time to do the one thing that would help us mature, which is to be on our own for a little bit of time. It's just crazy to me how simple it is. And yet we miss it entirely. It's like you want to walk up to your parents and say, you know what you probably didn't do enough of? Spend time by yourself, and just stuff like that. Because honestly, when you've outgrown your parents, there is something that's almost sad about that. It's inevitable unless your parents are really on the fucking ball, right? Like, this is one thing that I really think about a lot. I'm always changing, always questioning, I'm always adapting, I'm always growing. And the reason, quite frankly, is because if I wasn't, my daughter would have surpassed me years ago, just in terms of being able to think of things that I'm still too limited and insecure to even explore, right? So it's so much more important for a parent, for an adult, quote unquote, to be more like a child than anything else, because we're always taking it in. But no, we get this idea: I'm a parent, I know everything I need to know. As right now, I know everything. Like, how many of us heard that whole thing, like, don't do what I do what I tell you to do? What the fuck is that? It's like, you don't think I can see the contradiction? Oh, you just want me to take that at face value because you're an authority. All right. Right. And it's the weirdest dynamic, but it really is what any immature person would do if you threatened their authority. They would threaten you with a punishment. That's all they would know how to do. Go and talk to any 5-year-old who's not playing the game the way they want. Watch them. I'm going to take my ball and go home. Isn't that exactly what a lot of our parents are doing? It's like, we're not doing what they want. We're not validating them. Go to your room. What's wrong with you? Like, there are other options, but we're not adults. And so we don't think like adults. We think like children. And so we have children raising children, raising children. And then we wonder why everything's all fucked up.
Funny, bring up that last example. When I was living in New York a few years ago, just to make some extra money, before I was doing any social media stuff, I kind of nannied for a kid after work a couple of days a week, and he was an only child, and they had a super nice apartment in the middle of Manhattan, and he was like 7 or so, and sometimes there was his friend in the apartment, and they would play, and I would just kind of monitor and kind of like play with him, and when it wouldn't go well, he would like take his ball and be like, Andrew, we have to go. Whoa, George, let's take a breather here, and we would have a chat a little bit and break down the situation, not too much because he's 7, but it's funny because that is how adults act so often. Like, they do that, and so we have this perspective that because we're so caught up in the concepts, in age fucking meaning anything, we think that it means everything. We think that because we've gotten to this age, because we're a parent, like we should be seen in a certain way because we don't see ourselves in this way. And so we need things to validate that. And Amanda, your story is fucking powerful. And I mean, it's incredible where you're at now, knowing where you've been. But as you said, like, through all of that, the thing that you recognize is that you're the only one who can break you. And that's really what so much of this comes down to, is that responsibility, that fucking raw responsibility for yourself. And I mean, through that, this is all kind of circling around the idea of need. And I was thinking about this before, and I know Ray said early on we'd get into it, so I figure we can, we're basically talking about it already, but how much of our reality and our experience and the freedom we experience comes down to a lack of need for anyone or anything to do anything. right? Like there's so many people have so many expectations of other people because they're not willing to take a responsibility for themselves and their own experience. And they can be weak because they think that, they have this perspective that they need someone else to see them in a certain way in order to feel validated, in order to feel loved. And, the depth of this, the ability for you to go deep into the recognition that, you are reality, you are God. You can't do it while clinging to a need for anyone to see you in a certain way or an expectation for anyone to do anything for you. Like it has to come down to you because you're it. And if you're unwilling to see that it has to come down to you, it's always come down to you. Your entire experience has come down to you and your perspective, your willingness to deal with something, your willingness to face something, your willingness to let something go. It's always come down to you because it's always just been you. And that perspective that, someone else is going to do it for you. Someone else is going to help you out. I need you. I need your help. I need this. I need that. And all I see is a diminishing of the freedom that's available when you let go of that need. And I just see need as something getting in the way of the depth to which you can experience this reality, because inevitably it's going to get uncomfortable. There's going to be layers that you peel back and you're like, whoa, that's really uncomfortable. And if your immediate thought is, who can I talk to? Who can help me with dealing with this? It's like, there's nothing wrong with, having friends and people to talk to and whatnot. But if you're not willing to face that yourself, you're never going to face it. No one can help you face the obstacles in your life. And when you're willing to face that, when you're willing to take that responsibility, that's when you can really start going deep. That's when you can really start to find freedom. But no one can give you freedom. No one can set you free besides yourself.
Now, this is an interesting point, and it's something that I had texted you previous to this conversation based on something else that we were talking about. And the currency of reality, let's just say, okay? So I think it's very interesting that attention and value are essentially synonymous, and we don't recognize that. But the fact is, the more attention you put into your life, the more value you see come out of that attention, regardless if you're creating something, if you're working on something, if you're learning something, if you're building something. Either way, it takes attention. And that attention creates value. It is the basis of our economy. There is nothing that's worth anything that doesn't take human beings to make, which means attention equals value. And we know that from our own individual path. The more attention you spend on the moment, the more value you get out of your life, out of each and every moment. But we don't recognize that at some point. We don't recognize that attention itself equals value. And so we go looking for it from other people. We go looking for attention from other people because we don't recognize attention itself is the value. It can come from us. So we look at it, we look for it from other people. That's it. We're just trying to get value from other people through the one mechanism that we know works, attention, but we're not responsible. So we can't get it from ourselves. We must look to other people. And that's the core of that need.
I like that one a lot. And I'm glad you brought it up because you texted before, talking about something else, but it was kind of circling around the same thing, the need for someone else to validate you. And it's funny how this kind of infiltrates all the situations that we go through, and the depth with which you give attention to the moment that you're experiencing is the depth with which you can find the value in that. Like they really do go hand in hand. Like how much, even, and Mark, you brought this up earlier on the call, how you've started at night, not turning the TV on as much. And I do the same type of stuff, like be it at night or, when I'm eating lunch in between one of our calls or something. Usually I'll like pop on my computer, watch some sort of YouTube video, something. And I've started to, and today I didn't. And I still do here and there, but I didn't. And I just stared out the window eating my food. And there was so much more like depth to that experience because I wasn't focusing my attention on something else. Again, not to say that there's anything wrong with any of that, but when you do let go of that need to almost distract yourself from the moment, there's a depth. And I straight up started tripping, like everything out the window started wobbling around. I was like feeling those, I mentioned it on a previous call, like the voidy vibes I get when I smoke a lot. And I wasn't high at all, but I was very much like, oh my God, I'm in the center of the universe right now. And it was just from that, it was like fucking 10 minutes in. I'm like, holy shit, there is some fucking depth here. And so it makes me wonder with how often, we basically, consciously or not, avoid the recognition that we're alone, that this is all us. We do all of these things to distract ourselves from being able to give the attention to that moment that it would allow for the depth to recognize that not only am I not what I think I am, but I am everything forever, always have been, always will be. And, the layers just keep getting peeled back, but we do so many things to avoid that attention to the moment that allows for the depth to peel back all of that, false certainty that we feel like we have. So it just sometimes makes me wonder, like, how much we do that as an avoidance tactic of that recognition almost. And, whether it's conscious or not, I don't know. I'm just curious because, like, there are times where I do it and it's like whoosh, kind of sucked deep into that shit.
What do you mean by I? Think about it. Like, you're saying that I'm avoiding it, right? Who's avoiding it? What's avoiding it? Because it's all I. It's the whole collective. Like, this process of understanding that you are the all of everything requires everything to catch up to you. Because you're everything. So as you get it, you get it. More of you gets it. So the question is, what do you mean by I? Who's avoiding? We all are, because we're all the same I, and it's going to be that big of a goddamn process for us to turn around. But we're watching that process now. This is why we're having this conversation. I spent a decade wondering, what the fuck? How did I wake up? Why am I thinking all this shit? Where are all these goddamn insights coming from? What does this mean about me? Nothing at all, except that now they're available through the chain of irresponsibility, of immature parents, after immature parents, of a collective mentality that has been stooped in immaturity for generations. All of a sudden, all these insights are starting to bubble to the surface, and they're bubbling to the surface through individuals pulling away from the collective mentality, going beyond their parents and their parents' fear, standing up and changing the lives of everybody they interact with afterwards. But it's all because you are waking up to what you are. That's all it is. But it's not you, the body. And on the other hand, yes, it is. Because as much as you are the universe, we are also all the universe. And we're all in you. And you're in us. And so it's always responsibility. What we're talking about is not just the maturity of a human being, but the maturity of a divine one. And that is something that collectively is going to take some time and effort. But that time and effort, as always, will be shortened and diminished by our level of attention. The more attention we give ourselves in each moment, the faster this goes, the more impact we have. But as soon as you start trying to ask yourself, like, fuck, how are we doing? Is it changing? Is it changing? You're just slowing it down. You're just slowing it down because there's nothing to change except you. And the more you get that, the more it's already happening. And that's the best part about this. The more you understand what to do, the more you recognize you've always been doing it. And you just have to relax and let it happen. And that's where we are. And it's an exciting time to be alive. That all said, we have a few minutes left here before we wrap up. This has been a fucking damn fun conversation. I wanted to mention something very quickly because it came up in the live stream in the comment section. Thanks to everybody who could join us today. We really do appreciate that. Amanda, Your t-shirt has gotten a little bit of attention throughout this episode. Anybody who's watching it on the live stream, you can actually get a copy, or you can get your own t-shirt like that with those words, I am you, you are me, we are one, Dualistic Unity. You can pick that up, go to dualisticunity.com, go to the store drop down and click on merch. It will take you to Creator Spring, which is where all of our merch currently comes from. Though at some point in the near future, that may change if Amanda has anything to say about it, because she has been out sourcing information. She also has one of our mugs. She's been out sourcing information on different items in terms of merch, things that are made out of hemp, things that are biodegradable, things that last longer, things that we can do that we're currently not doing. So if you would like to keep up with what we are doing on that front, definitely join us on Patreon. Patreon.com/dualisticunity. You get to keep up with all the behind the scenes stuff that we're doing in Dualistic Unity. You get to hear our brainstorming sessions. Tier 3 supporters get to hear a little bit about how the book that Andrew and I are working on is going. But not just that, if you are a Tier 2 or a Tier 3 supporter, you can also join us on this Roundtable episode every 2 weeks on Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. It's available to our supporters in our community. And it's because this community is all this is about, because it's about you and you're a part of it. Right? That's it. And as much as it's funny, because I love how contradictory our idea of community is, because typically a community is a collective, but we're a collective of individuals. So the less that we think of ourselves as a collective, the stronger the community is.
I had that written down somewhere, something about we're all being ourselves together, or being there for ourselves together. It's kind of it. It's not that we're there for each other, because there is no each other, but these conversations get kind of funny when you're talking about a community that recognizes that there is no division between itself, which is a lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I maybe we'll save it for Patreon. The question of, is it changing, the curiosity about all that, how silly the question is, because who's asking and who's trying to change it. There's a lot. There's a lot there, but this has been a blast. I fucking love the roundtables. They're always a ton of fun. And yeah, Mark, Amanda, Michael, love you guys very much. It's always a pleasure to chat with you and interact and share stories and experiences, what it's all about.
Absolutely. So absolutely. We're going to wrap up here, but Michael, I just want to target you specifically and say thank you for joining us for this roundtable. I know it was your first. I look forward to seeing you at the ones that follow. Mark, as always, Amanda, everybody here is just incredible. We really appreciate all the insight that you bring to the table. We appreciate everything that you've gone through in your life and how you bring it to us and inform us and help us learn through your vulnerability and your strength and your willingness to talk about it. It's huge. And I say that as somebody who's been a coach, who's somebody who's married to a licensed counselor. Like, we recognize how much of the therapeutic relationship between people is lost in that it's therapy. The fact that this is not therapy and that we're all just coming together because we can makes it so much more powerful. And that is very much facilitated by each and every person that's here, by each and every person in our Discord, in our group chats, by everyone who is willing to regulate themselves and take responsibility. You're changing everything. Thank you. And on that note, we're going to end. Before I start on another rant, I do want to explore more of what you were talking about, Andrew, and we're going to do that on Patreon in a few minutes. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. We will see you next week.
Bye, everyone.